welcome back to Demigod Debut. I'm Mal, longtime Percy Jackson fan and Lightning Thief musical appreciator. Today I'm here with Rob Rokicki, the incredible composer and lyricist of the Lightning Thief musical. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It's really wild to be here kind of face to virtual face with someone who sneaks his way into my Spotify Wrapped every single year.
Glad you're still listening.
Yeah, super excited to get to talk about the show. Some context for you about this podcast and anyone else who might be new here. Most of the time, this is a podcast that's about my friend Julie reading the Percy Jackson books for the first time or having her demigod debut, you could say. So she wasn't able to make it to London, so I'm going a little bit rogue for a couple episodes here to talk about this production. There's just so much to talk about, so I'm really excited to get into it. So I'll start with the question we usually ask our guests, which is, what was your demigod debut or like your introduction to the world of Percy Jackson?
Well, I mean, like I would always love Greek myths. My mom's a history teacher, so I've known about like that. But it wasn't until, I mean, I'm a little older, so I missed like the demographic for when the books came out. It was honestly getting a script and then reading the book when I was submitting songs to be considered as a writer for the show. That's when I read the book.
Oh, nice. And so how much of the series have you read?
I read the first series. Yeah, and then like the Percy Jackson Gods and Myths, or that the other big addendum book. That's great too because it has a lot of Percy's like
Yeah.
POV. I wanted to kind of get a sense of like how Percy talked, but the later books in the first original like 5 book series is like great because you get a lot of chapters from other characters that you don't have in the Lightning Thief
Mm-hmm.
to just get a sense of like how Annabeth talks and stuff like that. That was helpful. And we did a little bit of foreshadowing and stuff like that, and from later books. But you know, we only had the rights to do the Lightning Thief, so that's kind of what we really focused on.
So do you kind of have a special place in your heart for the Lightning Thief, or like is there another book that's your favorite? Or
I'm a big fan of the Labyrinth. I think that was my favorite book.
that's my favorite.
I think it's got biggest set pieces, some of the biggest like adventure. I'm a big fan of that one.
Yeah, I think that one would make a great musical, just if you're looking for something else to write.
Well, if they give me the rights, I mean, Joe and I did throw out to Rick's agents back at the time, and I don't think they passed it to him. So maybe we'll have to try again of doing like a Heroes of Olympus like album.
Oh, cool.
You know, I have songs ideas for Nico. I have a song idea for Tyson. I have a song idea for an Annabeth Percy like love duet
Oh
that
my
would be
gosh.
really funny as they're like running away from the monsters after their first kiss. Like that would be really funny. So yeah, I had lots of ideas for songs, but you know, rights are tricky, and Disney like has
Right, yeah.
a bit of a lockdown on a lot of that stuff. So I don't know if it'll happen, but I did think about those characters. I love a lot of those characters.
Oh my gosh. Well, now imagining what those songs could be is gonna like keep me up at night. Oh, so I have a bit of a burning question. It might be kind of a silly question, but it's something that I've been wondering since I first heard the cast recording in like 2017. So, as a kid, I took a lot of pride in memorizing the prophecies. And so I have been so curious why the wording is slightly different in the musical. Because, like, in the book, it says the God who has turned, but in the musical, it talks about like the treacherous Lord. Like, is there a reason for the slightly different wording?
It rhymed better, I think. I don't know what the initial impetus was. I think it was God who has turned felt a little like originally and especially in the first iteration, we were talking to like a much younger audience. So I think for clarity, this might have been what that was because a God who has turned, you might not know that that means they have turned
Hmm.
right, that they're treacherous. So I think like that's why we tried to use clarity for that.
Excellent. Well, that's all I needed. So, like, we can end this here. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I get asked really random questions, and sometimes it's just simply about clarity. Others, it's usually about character. I got a really interesting question yesterday from a music director who was like, "Why did you write their sign in 6/4 instead of 6/8?" And I'm like, that's an interesting question, but it all comes from wanting it to sound like a horse, like sounding equine, like a centaur
Oh,
galloping. So six
interesting.
four six four feels more stately, whereas 6/8 moves a little faster. And I wanted it to feel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, it's like it's kind of like a trotting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I usually use the time signature or instrumentation or orchestration for character reasons or things like
Oh,
that.
so cool. So I and I think a lot of people feel the same way. I think like the Lightning Thief musical is a really, really great adaptation. And for me, it kind of made clear to me like what I do and don't like in an adaptation. Because I feel like growing up, I saw so many like terrible adaptations of my favorite books and kind of left saying it wasn't good because they didn't include every single detail. But then obviously in this, you have so much to cram into this 2 act musical. And so it
Mhm.
doesn't include every single detail, but it still works so well. I think you've kind of cultivated the vibes, for lack of a better way of saying it. So, like, what were you sort of prioritizing in making this adaptation to like make sure that the vibes were there and like staying true to the source material?
Well, I mean, a lot of that has to do with Joe Trace. I mean, he is such a incredible librettist. He understands Rick's tone so perfectly, and tone is like key. Um, because the stakes have to be high and the heart has to be there, and then the humor will come. And the humor is also an incredibly important component. We also really wanted to like focus on the character relationships, and one of the things that the fans and we're fans were kind of miffed about in the movies, as Rick was as well, was the relationship between Percy and Sally wasn't as clear as it could have been, and I think like we really wanted to make sure that that was central to our show, and that everything kind of stems from that. Joe's first scene that he adapted when it was first a play before I came along and helped make it into a musical was the scene with Percy and Sally on the beach. And the first song that I wrote to help get me the job for the musical was Strong. So, like, anchoring the show in really strong, like, emotional core, that was really fundamental. The history of the show, was is wild. It was a
Hmm.
1 hour, and then we ripped the show apart, and I wrote like 30 new songs, and we made it like a 2 act, and then over the course of the next 5 years, it turned into this thing. But over in every iteration, it was not just about adding more plot; it was about what is iconic that the fans are going to want,
Hmm.
and that we worked really closely with Rick's team, his agents, of what we could and couldn't do, because originally we only had 6 actors in a band, so they had to play 40
Right.
characters, and we're like, can't we combine Annabeth and Clarissa? And they're like, no, can't combine characters. So that ended up being a way of how we told the story. This kind of wild, everybody has to play a million things, which was very theatrical and really fun. So a lot of it comes out of necessity, but for me, when we were able to expand the show and add songs in, it was all about what's going to reveal character, what's going to be important for propelling the plot or revealing character. If theatrically on stage, it would be really weird, I think, or to do that entire tunnel love sequence, for example. Like, it just,
Hmm.
by streamlining our plot and not having to deal with the Helm of Darkness, I think it allowed to focus on the core quest.
Hmm.
Um, not saying these other plot points aren't great, but it's like that's something that a movie can do much
Right.
easier,
Yeah.
and that in a musical. And what is important that feels like it's crucial for our character development, like what's essential, because yeah, we have very little time. Originally, only an hour. So imagine you were given the task of like taking, a beloved first book with a ton of world building that people
Hmm.
don't know all that well. I mean, at the time, I don't know, and people know it, but it's like other folks in theater may not know it. So you had to like really kind of spell out the world of everything, and then make sure that that works, but then try to thread all these other themes that are in the whole series all in one package. It was a tough task, but I think we were able to do it. And in every iteration, we've been able to kind of expand it and layer it a bit more.
I don't know how similar like the original 1 hour version was to what TheaterWorks was doing a couple years ago in like 2022.
That was totally different.
Totally different. Okay.
So the original 1 hour show had almost none of the same songs from the Broadway show.
Oh, interesting.
Strong, Dad Got Expelled, Killer Quest, a version of it was different. Different intros, different outros. Their sign was completely different. Put You in Your Place was there.
Was in the same boat in that one?
Yes, and In the Same Boat was in there. But there was no Good Kid, no Grand Plan, no DOA, no Son of Poseidon, no any of that stuff. We had an iteration of Tree on the Hill, but it was very different. And I really loved that 1 hour. I think it was fun, but it was, as Joe liked to say, we built a roller coaster and then we had to rip it apart and build a theme park.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what we had to do with the 2 act of like really putting everything into place.
You mentioned like prioritizing things that like help you find the characters, and I think you've written really really excellent songs that really kind of unlock each of the characters of the main trio. I think the Good Kid, My Grand Plan, Tree on a Hill moments. So like, was there one of those that was like really easy for you? Was there one or some that were more challenging? Like, what did kind of coming up with those character moments look like?
They felt organic and necessary for the story when they came about. Um, Joe was working on a series of unfortunate events for Netflix, and he was kind of had to go away for a bit. And we had these like gaps sometimes in our writing schedule, and we had kind of done a big outline of where songs need to go. And oftentimes, I would take a scene that Joe had written and cannibalize it, take dialogue from it. That's what happened in The Room for Another Terrible Day. I literally took Joe's like dialogue, went into another room, and like used it because it was, oh, you're alive. I suppose that means good news, and then turn that into a song.
Hmm.
But for a song like Good Kid, I knew that we hadn't really checked in our hero in Act One. I wanted Percy to have like a standalone song since there was so much plot in Act One, and we had already threaded this idea of like, well, what does it mean to belong? What does it mean to find a community? And then losing that and getting kicked out of school and people not believing in you. And I was like, oh well, when the Oracle gives him his quest and then he's told he has to leave camp, he's being expelled again. That perfect like, oh look at that, we can use that as a moment for him to like lash out and have like this really kind of this temper tantrum that then ends up with him having resolved to say, I don't need any that their approval. I can do things on my own. I am good enough for someone,
Hmm.
if someone tells me so or not. And that to me was like a really important song, and I loved writing that song. um, it was also like personally, I have a strong connection to Percy and Annabeth because I had booked a Broadway show as an actor, and then it was taken away from me because the producers pulled out of the show. Just like, and I had another show that I had written that was
Hmm.
supposed to have a reduction, and those producers pulled out of it the last second because of the economy or whatever. And it was like,
Hmm.
I felt like no matter how hard I worked, I just couldn't get ahead. And I've been doing it for so long. And it's like you do all the right things. You try to be, a
Yeah.
good person. You try to, jump all the hoops, and you just can't get ahead. And so I was able to really tap into that like teenage angst that I was feeling in my own life. And so that was really interesting, like really easy for me to tap into for that. And songs like Grand Plan. Grand Plan, I love. It's my favorite song in the show. Um, and that was cut a couple times because we couldn't find a good place for it. I had an idea of where it needed to go, but that was another one where like we hadn't outlined it
Hmm.
that clearly of where that song needed to go, and so it just didn't find a home. And eventually, we figured out where it needed to go. But
Oh, I'm so glad it found a home.
yeah, me too. But yeah, that was kind of like how those came about.
Well, and I'm such a fan of the way in My Grand Plan, you kind of use Annabeth's invisibility cap as kind of this metaphor for like the way that she wants to be seen, because it's kind of not an angle that I had considered before this, but like it makes so much sense.
I think that's what the big overarching kind of thing is about parents and kids. The whole series is about
Hmm.
parents and kids. Are we going to fight the battles of our parents, or are we going to, find take our own agency to make the change we want to see? And so I think like that's a big part of the themes of it, and I think a lot of that ties into parents abandoning their kids when they needed the most. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I feel like this musical has found a pretty good balance between, having this massive universe, like you said, with so much world building and being able to tell like such a small bit of this story, but then also kind of include the little Easter eggs for the people who have read the book. So as you're like creating a
Hmm.
show like this, like how do you find that balance between telling the story to people who know the story and like making it special for them, but then also making it accessible to people who have never picked up a Percy Jackson book?
I think you just tell the story as best you can, and it's like be a good steward to the property. That's like if just try to hit the important points that I think, and tonally what the author's going for. We tried to like honor that, and then
Hmm.
I feel like everything else is out of your hands. We just tell the story that makes the most sense, that we would want to see, that we think is compelling and impactful. and meaningful to us, and then usually it is impactful and meaningful to others. I think if you start thinking about your audience and like trying to clarify too much or trying to
Hmm.
dumb stuff down or whatever, like the audience will be ahead of you, and I think it's better to just pick those beats that are so important to the character and try to follow the story as best you can. And like I said, Joe Trace is such an incredible
Hmm.
book writer, and really understands these characters and what they're going through and all of that. And it's great to have somebody give a roadmap of like, okay, this is how we're going to
Yeah.
focus it. But yeah, I'm sure there are people who are like, what? But for the
Yeah.
most part, I think you get swept up in the adventure,
Hmm.
and people, regardless of all the the subterfuge and who did this and the rules of the thing, I think at the end of the day, people connect to it because we all have a sense of tapping into our teenage selves. We're all in a bit of a state of arrested development, trying to please our parents, no matter how old you are.
Oh yeah.
And the themes of the show hit those so well, or the themes of the book too, of the series. So they resonate regardless of us making the plot,
Hmm.
exact, or you know.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite thing that you wrote for the show?
I have lots of favorite things. It's like asking you what your favorite baby is. It's really hard. I'm very proud of the show. I'm really proud of rando things musically that I was able to achieve.
Hmm.
The time signature and key signature changes in Good Kid, I think are effective, and I like them. Um, I like the emotional heft of what Tree on the Hill does. I like some lyrics. I think my favorite lyric in the show, it's so weird, but it it gets me choked up, was maybe my dad was a screw up too. I have had so many kids tell me that like they saw their parents for the first time in a different way
Hmm.
when they see the show, or this idea of like your parents are just doing the best they can, and you have to let your resentment go for them or it'll just eat you alive. And it's really the difference between Luke and Percy, because Luke can't let it go. So that lyric to me is a good one, and that I really love the end of the show, Bring on the Monsters. I think I wrote it during it was a totally different song, and then somebody got elected the first time around, and I changed all the lyrics.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. I made it about a little bit more about what also the theme of the book is, and I also it reminds me of my favorite one of my favorite movies as a kid was The Empire Strikes Back, which is this idea of like your friends maybe scattered to the four winds, but we're gonna hold fast to each other, and the world is unfair, and bigger things. Our parents have left us kind of a broken world, and they're messing it all up. But if we stick to each other and fight the good fight, um, you know, we'll eventually see the world we want. And I think that's
Yeah.
a powerful message that I love that the show has.
Yeah. I definitely love Bring on the Monsters. It's a great ending for the show, I think. You mentioned Luke and Percy, and I think you have created this like good kid reprise that Luke sings towards
Hmm.
the end of the show. And I think it's just a great way to emphasize the way that they parallel each other and kind of represent what the other could have become. So, kind of, how did you end up writing that reprise and coming up with that moment for Luke?
It was a monologue that Luke had over some underscoring. It was actually the Tree on the Hill underscoring
Oh,
originally, and it was all about like, this is what they do to you, this is what happens to Talia, right? And it was like, uh,
yeah.
don't let the gods get away with this. We have to take revenge, kind of thing. And then I started playing. Well, it was the Last Day of Summer theme, and I had that going, and I was like, "Whoa, that's interesting." And in a workshop, I started the underscore of Good Kid under the monologue, and I was like, "Oh, this is an interesting juxtaposition." And it was in the middle of a reading, so like all these like right, I think like right before the reading or during the reading, I was like, oh my god, I know what it is, I know what it has to be. Can we change it, can we change it for the second reading? I think he just needs to sing it. I figured it out, and they were like, no, we can't teach the actors that. I was like, no, but it's gonna be so good, like everybody's gonna freak out, we gotta do it, we gotta do it. And they were like, for the next one, I was like, no, this will sell the show. We have to change it. And they were like, no, we can't. So I was like, okay, fine. But they all were like, okay, try it the next
Hmm.
iteration. And as soon as I tried it, it was like, it hit like gangbusters. And everybody was like, oh, dang. So I was like, it's working. I see everybody in the audience will lean in when that moment happens in the theater. It's so thrilling. Because, yeah, it's great to have a character that's a foil of another character.
Yeah.
A good villain is a villain that you understand with or can empathize with or
Hmm.
understand their point of view.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you got it in there because it goes real hard.
It's a puzzle. A show is a puzzle, and as soon as the pieces,
Hmm.
like something clicks, you're like, ah, yes. It's like unlocking something something that fits together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Kind of my last general lightning thief question. So, when you were writing the music for the show, did the thought of the cast recording like enter your mind at all? Just because I think that's such a way that kids in particular are introduced to musicals, like through a cast recording. And like this is a great cast recording. This was my introduction to the musical. So just wondering, like, was that something kind of in the back of your mind, thinking about like this potentially being a cast recording, or were you more focused on it being a show?
I mean, so much is out of my control. Cast recordings are insanely expensive.
Hmm.
Think of a number and then triple it, and
Oh,
then it might be not even nearly close to how expensive a cast recording is. Off Broadway shows have a very high overhead, but they're not the millions and millions of
hmm.
dollars of Broadway for the most part. But a cast recording is expensive. And our show wasn't originally, I think it ran for 2.5, 3 months off Broadway originally, the two act. And it's a credit to Van Dean. At the time, he worked at Broadway Records. Now he's at Centers or Cutting Edge Records, I want to say. Maybe it's Center Stage Records. I have to remember what it is. But Van Dean is responsible for uh, hearing the show and saying, we need to record this. And I helped kind of run the recording session. We had an amazing producer named Mike Kreuter, who is a drummer. He's like was Cheetah Rivera's drummer on
Oh,
things. So if you
wow.
don't know who that is, musical theater royalty there. And I liked wanting to mix it and produce it with a drummer. Because I wanted the album to sound, I think I said, I wanted to sound like a Weezer, Weezer record, or like then like 90s pop rock that I love, and not sound like a quote unquote musical theater Broadway record, where oftentimes the vocals are all forward and the band is squashed. I wanted it to feel really rock and roll and
Yeah.
scrappy and fun. I think we achieved that.
Yeah, I definitely think you did.
Yeah, it was a 14-hour mad crazy day of recording, and we got to record at Avatar or the Power Station.
So you did the whole thing in one day?
14-hour day. We recorded the band in the morning,
Whoa.
and then the actors in the afternoon, all the way up until, I think we started at like 8 a.m. and we went until about midnight or 11. And then I did I did some overdubs of things with some extra instrumentals and stuff like that. I played on afterwards, but for the most part, we caught everything there. But yeah, it's a credit to Van, and then to take a risk on a show like this, and yeah, we had the highest pre-sales in Broadway Records history.
Wow.
I'm trying to move heaven and earth to make a London cast recording happen. I've been trying to make it happen for like 2 months. It's just a lot of moving pieces. People are like, you have to deal with contracts and people leaving the
Hmm.
show, and and who's around, and producers and all that stuff. So I mean, like, nothing is ever guaranteed, and when anything ever happens, I'm so grateful, um, because I knew we weren't going to be able to get a Broadway cast recording of all the changes we had made from off Broadway to Broadway, and there are a lot, especially in the underscoring and stuff like that in the show. I advocated to have us be able to record a bunch of cut songs
Hmm.
and use the Broadway cast for that. So that's where the deluxe album, like 5 cut songs, came from.
And I'm so glad you released those.
Yeah, and then I've released 2 more since then.
Yeah.
Right, there's the Across the River cut song, and what's the other one? Take the Weight. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, my fingers are crossed for a London cast recording now that you say that.
that cast is so special, and
Yeah.
we added so many things, as you know. So yeah,
Well, great transition, I guess, to the London production. So,
yeah, there we go.
anyone listening, if you don't want to know things about London, go away now. Um, so the first big thing that like got a reaction out of me is the new verse in the campfire song.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for Clarice. And I didn't even realize until we got back to the hotel and we were talking about it. I didn't realize that like Katie Gardner's verse had been cut because I was just so excited about the new verse. So like what kind of brought about this change like for this
It
production?
was Joe. Joe was like, "Why doesn't Clarice have a verse?" I was like, "Why doesn't Clarice have a verse?" And we were like, "Clarice is a bigger part of the show. We Katie is
Hmm.
fun, but like if we're really talking about parents and children and wanting to thread like the Put You in Your Place theme with her and her dad, and then like at the end we see her like bonding with Annabeth, and they become like they're not rivals anymore. They're on the same side. Like I think like it's important that we see where all of this is coming from because she's coming from a place of hurt too, right, from her parents.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's a perfect idea, let's do it. So that's why we swapped it out. The song is already long enough. I didn't need another verse for Katie, though
Hmm.
I do love Katie's verse.
Yeah.
And it will always live on the cast recording, but I think it was nice to add Clarice in. Yeah, that was Joe's idea. We wrote that song one night when he like spent the night over at my house, and we were like writing that song all night. And he was like sleeping on my couch, and I was like in bed with my wife, and I'm like texting him from the couch. I was like, "What if there was a verse by somebody?" And he's texting me, and my wife is like, "Just do it in the morning." I'm like, "No, this is too fun."
No, this is important.
Yeah, this is important. No, we have like truly writing the show is one of the most joyful things I've ever had been appear had done in my life.
It's amazing. Yeah, and I feel like you can really feel that joy in the recording. Like, it's always more fun to consume media that people enjoyed making?
Yeah, I think so.
So my personal favorite change, the new opening song to Act 2.
Yeah.
I I knew it was coming because I had seen it on your Instagram story. You posted like the song list and I was like, "Oh my god. That is my favorite song on the deluxe album. It was like my top song on Spotify in 2022. Like I love
Mhm.
Try and I really thought that it didn't fit with the show. It felt a little too sentimental, I guess, for like Percy and Annabeth who don't really know each other.
Yeah, me too. That's why we cut it.
But I have never in my life been happier to like be wrong about something because I felt like it fit perfectly. So like why put Try in the show for this particular production?
Well, Joe and I had an opportunity to tinker around with a new production, new iteration, new direction, everything. I mean, and one of the things I think we looked at was, is there a cut song that felt like, the fans really love that we thought could work? And we looked at Pick a Side, but I think at the end of the day, Try is the one that resonates the most.
Hmm.
But exactly like you said, it feels a little too sentimental. It's a little too like emotionally mature. It was like a little like I don't know, Christian rock or something. I don't know, but I was like, the end of the day, I think like it was tapping into a lot of like themes that people loved about these characters, of them
Hmm.
having each other's backs, and them this idea that I love, which is like, I'm totally gonna mess this up. I'm gonna do it anyway, because if I don't try, how will I ever know?
Hmm.
What will happen? Um, and and I think that's a really powerful message, because inaction
Yeah.
is letting someone make decisions for you.
Hmm.
And if I may fail, but I'm going to try. I think it tied all these other themes that we didn't even know in the show that we had already had together.
Hmm.
So, like the end of Bring on the Monsters, there's a line that ties that in with that. There's a line in DOA that had been um, referenced because of Try, and I was like, oh well, yeah, it actually is essential to this show,
Yeah.
and it felt important. But one the way we got away with the sentimentality of it is they're scared out of their minds, and we starting it with
Hmm.
them in their heads. So
Hmm.
the lyrics are slightly different than they are on the deluxe album, and I think
Yeah.
that was the way in, that they haven't figured it out. They're not. It isn't until the end of the song when they're actually acknowledging each other, and then we had the reprise of that right before the
Hmm.
underworld again to tie it together. So like it really is the thing. It's funny. It's like this London iteration is, I think, the most complete version of the show. To me, I think it feels like the version of the show that it always wanted to be.
Yeah, I was so curious how that was going to work in there and now I'm like I can't believe this wasn't here the whole time. Like it works so well, but I think yeah, you're right about the slight lyric change and making it less we're singing to each other and having this moment together, and more just like we're kind of all simultaneously having these feelings. Like it clicked and it was great.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I know you were in London. Was it for tech or just rehearsals or?
I was not there that long. I was there for a little, like about a week. And in that week, I did a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, I had worked while they were in rehearsals on a bunch of things. So, like, I had added my Minotaur fight music, quite a bit of it. That was really fun to like reorchestrate. And then I did some extra underscorey bits and bobs here and there. Um, there was some extra fight music in Son of Poseidon that I really enjoyed that actually felt more complete. So there was a lot of those things that were like little tweaks. And I had orchestrated try because I wanted that, but it wasn't until we got cooking that I was like, oh, we need to have a reprise. So,
Hmm.
and then I wrote the bows while I was there, and I changed a couple lyrics. There was like some things that were like Britishisms that I wanted, that I made some slight lyric changes to, or like a riff or a thing that I wanted the actors to do that I was like, I want it to feel a little bit more rock and roll. Let's have fun. So that's where I was able to like play around with when I was there for tech into previews up
Hmm.
through opening. We only got like 5 previews. It was a very short preview run.
Oh yeah, that is quick. I got to talk to Scott Folan, who's Grover, as you know, and he said that like a highlight of the process for him was you being there. He also said that you had a bit of a disagreement about the speed at which Triana Hill should be. Like he wanted it much slower.
Everybody wants to make that thing a funeral dirge. I'm like, no. You got to keep it moving. Everything is, you got to keep moving. As soon as you become precious about something, then it falls into the land of like sentimentality, and not sincerity.
Hmm.
And that's the balance we want to walk. We want to be sincere. We don't want to be sappy. We don't want to be, sentimental. And this is a traumatic thing that happened to Grover. And I think, you know, he's he's reliving it in his mind, and if we go to a place of it being too slow, it feels passive, and he needs to be
Hmm.
living it as if it's happening all over again with the tension and fear of it happening. It's like a murder ballad. That's kind of how I look at it, like one of those old kind of
Mm, yeah.
songs of where bad things happened, you know.
So, do you have any like highlights or favorite moments from getting to be in London, like work with the cast and?
I just love the cast so much. I'm going to be really sad. They're all leaving, most of them on March 2nd. So if you can see them this month, go see them this month. Um, I'm hoping to get a cast recording with them. If not, maybe someone else. We'll get some other amazing actors in there. I think Max is truly special. And Jessica Leach. I mean, they're all just incredible, and Scott as well.
Hmm.
The whole crew, all the understudies, all, I mean, they're just amazing human beings. Lizzie, our director, and Ben, our music director, are just like, they're some of the smartest, kindest people I've worked with. Um, and we had a blast together. I think there's something about, now that I'm a parent, I love working with other parents. And Lizzie
Mm,
has 2 boys, and she had read these books and knew these books. And I think there was something about having a mom
hmm.
as a strong director that was able to like anchor this show in real heart and real stakes that was thrilling. She's also like a hell of a genius choreographer, a brilliant director. This was her first like big directing show. She's done
Oh,
some directing, but everybody kind of knows her as a main choreographer. So it was so cool for her to like get to showcase what she does. I also loved working with the illusionist. I mean, getting to work with someone to create
oh
like a pen into
yeah.
a sword that's a proper like illusion was amazing. Like some of the Medusa getting her head chopped off was incredible. Paisley's incredible. Like she's sticking around.
Oh, Paisley is so great.
So yeah, she's sticking around for a bit. So yeah, I'm like, the whole thing was just like,
Yeah.
you never, when a show closes, you're like, oh well, that was that, and on to the next thing. And then this show consistently has kept coming back in whatever iteration over the past decade of my life. And every time I get to work on it, I learn something new, or I get to experience something
Yeah.
and make it better, or meet incredible people. Yeah, the people that I've gotten to work with on this iteration is just, they're really special.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that is very much reflected in the show that they are putting on stage. Like, I mean, I just had the best time watching it.
Yeah. And now, had you seen Broadway, or have you seen?
I saw, I was actually there opening night of the tour in Chicago.
Great. So you know about the toilet paper.
Yes.
So I thought Lizzie had a genius idea of making that moment work, because it is really hard, directors out there, to be like, there's a tidal wave and it smashes on,
Hmm.
and there's a giant sword fight that happens. This is like wild things. And I thought what Lizzie did and the use of immersiveness in the space was like really exciting.
Yeah.
It made it feel like you were all getting like hit by that tidal wave. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, I thought the projections there, like the way that they were able to use both like the floor and the wall behind them to make it
Yeah.
super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. We had never really done that much productions before. I'd seen another production in Japan, tour that had used some really cool productions, but it was cool to see them integrated into the theater space in such a cool way in London.
Just, if you haven't seen the London production and you have the means to go see the London production, go. It's so good.
My favorite version of the show. I mean, I love all the versions. I love all
Hmm.
the actors who have been a part of it, but there's something really, really great about
Yeah.
this production.
I mean, I think it just gets better and better. And, maybe someday it'll come back to the States and I can see it a bunch more times.
Maybe, who knows? I would say no, but then I would probably be wrong,
You
because
don't want to spend another 10 years on the show?
I don't know if it helps me get my baby through college. Why not? But I mean, I have written lots of other musicals. Yeah, we just approved a production in Luxembourg. I was like, all right, go for it.
Oh, all right.
So there's lots of but it's being done on the amateur market like a
Yeah.
lot, and that's because I work in education, and I work in children's theater a lot. So it's really cool, to know that this property and this show as well is like resonating, and young people are doing it all over the world, which is really kind of quite humbling.
Yeah, I feel like I'm constantly seeing schools posting about their productions like on social media. And I'm like, oh, yay, another high school production.
I don't know how they sing it, but they try. I'm like, that has flexible software. You can change the keys. I'm always like, nobody needs to be a hero and blow their voices out singing, Skrelton for Pro 2 in your place. But if you got the singers, do it. It's fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking this time.
Of course. Yeah.
You have anything you've been working on? Anything else people should check out?
Yeah, I'm writing a musical right now with Anna K. Jacobs, who wrote the musical Teeth. She's an
Ooh.
incredible composer and lyricist in her own right. And she's written the book, and I've written the music and lyrics to a new show called The Real Gemma Jordan. And I released a concept album to it in November, December. And please check it out. It's got a who's who of young Broadway talent. They're all amazing, and I think it's the best sounding record I've put out. And I hope you listen to it. It's on every streaming platform you can listen to. And if you like my music, I think you're really gonna like it. It's got lots and lots of cool stuff.
All right. Great. Do you want to plug your social media? Tell people where to find you?
Oh yeah. Well, who knows how long we'll have social media for? But
Well,
right now I'm on Instagram at rrokicks, RROKICKS, and then you can find me on YouTube at Rob Rokicki Music, and I have lots of stuff on there, behind the scenes videos about how songs were written from the Lightning Thief, why they were cut from the Lightning Thief, concert footage, original lyrics to old versions of songs. If you ever want to hear the 3 different versions of Migraine Plan, or the trio version of Migraine Plan, or any other things, there I've got tons and tons of stuff.
oh my gosh, I didn't even know this was out there. I know what I'm doing later today.
Go check it out. I got lots of music on there. It's a lot of fun.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again.
Of course.
This has been delightful. Thank you for writing this musical. I mean, I'm a big fan, and
Well, I'm glad. I am too.
yeah. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Good luck with the show you're directing.
Yeah. Oh, there is one other show that I am doing working on right now called Strange Tales. That's my favorite show I've written. It's called TAILS. I'm hoping to get a production, like a proper production, out there soon again. But I'm doing a workshop with a bunch of really talented young performers that goes up in 2 weeks. So I'm excited for that.
Amazing.
And there are videos of that on my YouTube as well. So check it out.
All right. Lots to check out.
All right. Take care.
Hi, thanks for listening. Links to our social media as well as Rob's stuff can be found in the episode description, or you can just search us up. We are at Demigod Debut Pod pretty much everywhere. If you liked what you heard, please rate or review wherever you're listening. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming with the first 2 chapters of The Last Olympian next week. See you later. Bye!